So it is with great pleasure that well, firstly, I'm Steve Pike. For those of you who don't recognise my voice, I would normally have my webcam on, but for some reason it didn't this morning. So you're stuck just with my disjointed voice. It is my great pleasure to introduce my friend Patrick McLoughlin to talk us through perfect client attraction, specifically for accountants, because Patrick is an expert in the accounting profession. We've been friends and business colleagues for a long time. We've been on each other's courses. We share lots of accountant clients and members in common, and many of all of the members that I work with that have used Patrick's services talk very highly of, incredibly highly of what Patrick and his team do, and similarly, I think that it cuts both ways. So we're in the mutual admiration society, hence the reason for doing the event together this morning. Patrick is pretty much the UK's leading expert on various aspects of marketing, but I guess particularly telemarketing for accountants, because that is what he specialises in. But whether that, to what extent that features in today's session, I don't know, because I'm new to this material, as indeed I guess are the rest of us. I will also be giving you some stuff at the very, very end, which will be completely free, so you might want to hang around for that. You want to hang around anyway because the content will be great. But basically, that's what I wanted to say by way of introduction, Patrick. We're now 3 minutes past 10, so it's probably a good time for me to pass over to you, and I will shut up.
That is fantastic. Thanks very much, Steve. It's we've been working together for a few years now, and there's a great I'm not going to use the word synergy, a great connection with us and our clients, because we noticed early on that our AVN clients of ours who worked with AVN were tending to get 2 or 3 times the average fee coming through, and of course this is all about return on investment. Although a lot of the work we do is telephone sales based, it doesn't really feature today. I'm going to use some examples, really trying to practice what I'm preaching, that are going to be based on ourselves, mainly because I couldn't find too many accountancy examples out there. But there's no sales pitch for telemarketing, so don't worry about that. I'm going to focus the next 45 minutes on trying to give you everything that I can to help you identify and attract your perfect clients. After that, if you want some more help, I'm going to show you where to go. But as I say, our key is giving you as much, set some expectations really of what I'd like you to get out of this morning. Minimum expectation is that any marketing, any work you do on a track business, you're going to see today as a day when the ground shifted. So there's no pressure on. We're going to see today as, hopefully when we look back, as you were better informed to make decisions that resulted in better clients, higher lifetime value, and just more effective practice growth. Right, I've remembered to press record. That was the big one to go. Wonderful, okay. The gist of today is based on this. Brief introduction I'll run through now. Choosing your clients intelligently is far more important to your success than your technical skills or your ability. We all spend so much time improving our technical skills, improving the work we do. We've just got to shift some of that energy into making sure we're working with the right people. I'm going to give you an example to really highlight the importance of this. And I picked on Janet. I knew I'd say Janet and John. Ladybird Books is just about a stone's throw from us. Of course, the famous Janet and John books in Loughborough. So they're quite apt names for our 2 imaginary characters. I'll give you a very brief background. They both qualified in the same year. They both joined a firm within 6 months of each other. 5 years, they both left within a year of each other to set up their own practices. They're both having very different outcomes or very experiences in terms of their success with their own businesses. Let's have a look at why. If we look at the gross recurring fee, John is pulling in a £1,500 fee. Janet is £5,000. She is doing a lot more advisory work for her clients. The effect of that on the margin is that John has found the fee and the margin naturally. That's dropped to 23%. Janet's margin is going in the other direction. It's increasing as she is growing the advisory non-compliance work. This, of course, has an impact on the lifetime value or the lifetime of these particular clients. What John will tell you is that his clients seem to be hopping away for cheaper advisors, cheaper service providers, and Janet is finding again her clients are staying that little bit longer because they're getting more value, they're getting more help in the outcome, so price is becoming less of an issue. The effect of that is in the lifetime value is drastic, as you can see here. John is generating £6,000 per average client, Janet is 40. More importantly still, of course, is the lifetime profitability. You can see John is making less than £1,400 from his average client, and for Janet, she's making more than 10 times that. What that actually means, the result of that, is that, of course, John is spending a lot more time replacing clients. Janet can invest a lot more money in getting the right clients on board. She can afford to say no. Now, what we're seeing here in terms of the two extremes of Janet and John is reflected by some research from the States. This is into buyers, but of course that's the exact same as business owners. And we're seeing three groups develop. The tightwads, the tight asses, these are the people who have a lower ceiling for spending. These are looking for a deal. These are the can you sharpen your pencil brigade. We've then got the average spenders, which are naturally the bulk people out there. I find that a lot of clients, a lot of accountants I talk to do really notice that the pressure, too many business owners, the conversation tends to be about fees. I just want to make it really clear that there's a great neglected lump of the population of business owners out there, 15%, about 1 in 7, who naturally will look at the highest option. They're drawn to that. They're drawn to value. If you demonstrate it, they will buy it. That's what they're looking for. They're the clients we want to take on board. They are, of course, all reflected in the client spectrum. What we're going to do today and for the rest of our careers is, of course, try and move our clients along this spectrum from the red into the green. The problem, of course, is that when we look at our potential clients, we can't tell who's who. We can't tell who the greens and who the reds are. Unfortunately, they don't have great big blue circles emanating out of their heads telling us that these are the perfect clients that will spend a premium because they're looking for greater outcomes. And the reality of that is that before we move into the real content, I just want us all to accept that you're responsible for the clients you attract, just as I am. It's you who frames the conversation. You frame the environment that conversation takes place in. We all subconsciously attract certain types of people, and we do that by what we say and what we do. And of course, most importantly, that all comes from what you think. And that's why today a lot of what we're going to be working on is really changing some presumptions we make, really looking at the mindset, what's in our mind when we start these conversations. Now, first part of today is focusing on who that ideal client is. We accept that all clients aren't equal, as Janet and John have shown us. So we've got, for simplicity's sake, we've got on the spectrum, one end are diamonds and the other end are our donuts. It's always wonderful to welcome new clients on board, just as it is to munch a donut or two, but too many of them and you feel quite unwell, just like our bad clients. So let's have a look at finding our diamonds. How are we going to identify them amongst if we look at our current client base? What a lot of advice has been in the past is to grade them, put criteria together on, do you like working with them, are they profitable, where are they in their lifetime of the business, etc. My experience is that can give you a bit of a slanted view. So what I would say is really to focus more on do you enjoy working with them, because that is so key. Do they feel right for you? and the outcomes that you can bring. But in a bit more detail, we're going to focus on who benefits most from working with you. Because quite naturally, those clients that are getting more from you will value you more. That tends to evolve around what problems you can solve and the clients that have those problems. And we can sum that up nicely on the biggest impact you've had on a client's life. A question I always ask potential clients, and I know Steve, I've heard Steve come out with it as well, is tell me about the clients whose lives you've changed. Tell me about the work you're most proud of, the work that makes you get up in the morning, because that's where your ideal clients are. And this all falls nicely. Oh, actually, I forgot this one. This is we're back to John and Janet, and we're going to have a look at their approach and really why those fees differ and why those outcomes differ as well that they can deliver. So, John specialises in construction. If we ask John why, he'll tell us that, well, I've got a lot of these firms as clients, a lot of construction and building companies. We'll ask him to tell us some more, and what he'll say is, well, they seem to like working with me. Janet also specialises in construction, but if we ask her why, what Janet will tell us is that cash flow is a really big issue for builders, and she can help them improve it and manage it. Again, we'll ask her to tell us some more, and she can. What she will describe and explain is that for building companies, the real margin in work, the really profitable work, kicks in at the £100,000 plus projects. If their cash flow isn't planned well in advance and managed properly, they cannot compete for this work. Their growth will always be limited. What Janet can do is plan out that cash flow in advance that enables them to take on this more profitable work. And on top of that, she can help them sleep better at night. Now, the difference there, you can see why Janet is putting these fees in, the clarity she has about what she can do and who she can do it for, and the clarity that John doesn't have yet. And this all comes down to one principle, and that's the premium fee principle. The distance from what a client wants to what they need reflects the value you bring and the size of your fee. If a client tells you, do my year end, do my tax returns, you're pretty much a commodity. Anybody can do it. If a client tells you to do that, you have a conversation with them, you start exploring and drilling down into what you can do, and you show them what they really need, you are beyond comparison, and your fee cannot be compared. You can put your fee together based on the value that you bring. So I'll hold that for a minute because it's a really, there's a few hopefully in here really kind of key points. I hope this is one that that has some impact for you there. Now, how are we going to identify these ideal clients? Even if we know roughly what we're doing and who benefits, it's a little bit more complex than that. We really have to get under the skin of where they are, how we can find them, and more detail to what we can do, which Janet has started to do in terms of her proposition there. So, why do your perfect clients value you? This is a little obvious, but so few firms do this. Ask them. A lot of questions is how can we improve? What can we do better? Even more important is what are we doing well? Why do you like working with us? These are vital questions that you really got to ask them. Pick the phone up and ask them if you're not having those conversations. During your meetings, tag it onto the agenda. Focus on this point. Really focus on what is it that we do well for you. What do you like about working with us? Now, here's an odd slide. What I'd like you to do at the moment is to get into the mindset of a potential client. So we're going to play a little game. Our client, not a potential client, an actual client. Our client manufactures cat food. They charge an absolute premium. It's twice the price of anything else on the market. So how are we going to tap into and identify, to pull out of the crowd, their perfect clients? They're the people who are going to pay this premium for their product. Well, if we start thinking about it, we're going to think premium price, therefore it appealed to wealthy cat owners. But the problem there is that just because they have the money, it doesn't mean that they see value in paying twice the price or this fantastic food for their cat. They might, just because they have the money, they're not going to be driven or focused on paying more. What we will find, the people who are going to be attracted to this, are those that love their cats more, that really make a fuss over their cat. Odd conversation, this one, but you'll see what we're talking about in a moment or two. So what we're going to focus on here is we can't measure their love for their cat, but what we can do is look at certain ways they can express that. When we love people, we buy them presents, we buy them Christmas presents, we buy them birthday presents. What about if your client invested their marketing budget in asking cat owners, put some research out there, forms to fill in, etc. Do you spend more on your cat for their Christmas present or for their birthday present? What we're seeing there is this kind of rule of thumb, this heuristic that really pull out of the crowd. Of course, it doesn't matter which one they say. The fact is, if they're spending money on their cat at Christmas or for their birthday, they are more likely, as a rule of thumb, to invest in a premium product, to really look after tiddles with fantastic cat food. Now, does that make sense? Okay. Great stuff. The answer, of course, is Christmas. Everyone spends all for the cat Christmas. Now, the other way, and something I spent a lot of time on talking about at last year's webinar, was ideal client personas, where we invent a fictitious and imaginary client, and we build this detail, these layers of detail around them. So we focus on the goals and the values. We really look at where we can reach them and where they hang out. Really important points here in terms of the challenges, the problems that they face, and ultimately filtering down to our message and their objections in terms of our sales message or marketing message. What I've found over the last year or 18 months is clients will complete these, they'll put it together, and it's left on the hard drive, and nothing really happens with it. So what I'm suggesting now, what I'm finding a little bit more success in terms of relating to your activity and who your ideal client is to actually focus on one or two of your best clients. It just makes it a little bit more real. So in terms of your marketing, in terms of whatever you're doing, think, would this appeal to Bill or Barry or whoever? That is really key, that you can actually, that these people do become real to you, and that's the problem I've had with ideal client personas. Right. Oops. Now, what I want to do is just give you an example of why we're going into the bother of all of this. There's something that, once we've got this layer of understanding, once we start to feel who our ideal client is, it makes an enormous difference to the messages that we can put out and the reaction we get back. I want to show you an example that comes from a firm of lawyers that specialize in divorce. Here's an advert they ran, which I think is just absolutely stunning. It gets a real strong reaction. And you might think, well, this is brilliant creative work, which of course it is, but this is driven by research. It's the research that allows this kind of a result. I don't know if you've seen this one before, Steve.
I love that. No, I haven't.
It's just a real visceral impact, isn't it? It's
fabulous.
Those couple of words speak a million words. What I'd like you, I was waiting for that. What I'd like you to do now is, if you could open up your website on another page on your browser. I'll give you a moment or two. What we're going to do is just have a look at your home page, and I'm going to run by some claims that firms make on their home pages, and I'd just like you to give yourself a point for each one that appears on your page, on your home page. Right. Let's have a quick look. We're going to look at what we've talked about is identifying our ideal clients and standing out to them with messages like that. The other side of the coin is that when we're making claims using language that every other firm uses, rather than standing out and appealing to our ideal client and specializing, it's generalizing us and it's moving into this kind of commodity area. We effectively stop promoting our firm and we're promoting accountancy and the messages that anybody will do. So just give yourself a point if you have any of these claims on your homepage. If you're a leading or indeed an independent firm, if you have a friendly, unique approach, if you're passionate and or proactive, again, give yourself a point. We're just having a game here, but the point is, if at the end you can, if you'd like to put the number of points that you have scored, our leader, I'll give a entirely free of charge half-an-hour website review, just coming up with some suggestions and ideas on hitting home with your ideal clients. We pride ourselves on, there's another one there. If you specialise in owner-managed businesses, of course the reality is 99.9 firms do. And so any variation on the big enough to cope, small enough to care claim. And then the last couple we're going to run through, client focused, we work as part of your team. These are kind of the minimum standards, the price of entry that most of your clients are looking for. Or if you offer the full range of accountancy services and talk about the professional or high technical standards. Again, these are the minimum standards that your clients and prospective clients will be looking for. Also going to look at briefly at the language you use. There is a tendency to use rather large words because we want to sound professional, we want to sound perhaps bigger than we are. The problem with this is we stop being authentic. We don't come across as real. Something in the mind just that this isn't right. And so let's just run through some of these words. Assist, purchase, utilize, advantageous, etc. Now, I've got a quote here from, if it appears, from David Ogilvy, who is probably from Ogilvy and Mather, probably seen as the main man, the father of modern advertising. And again, this is a really key point I'd love you to take on board for all of the copy and all of how you present yourself. His quote is, if you're trying to persuade people to do something or buy something, it seems to me you should use their language, the language they use every day, the language in which they think. Keep it simple. We use big language and it really just puts people off. Just as a general kind of thought, if you're a small practice, don't try and be big. Just work with people who want small. There's enough out there. You know, I see a lot of sole practitioners with Big Ben or the Houses of Parliament or enormous office blocks as their key edges. Do you know there's plenty of people who don't want that, and they're the clients that you're going to attract and you're going to do better work with. What brief one here, we've got 3 circles. This is everything that your prospect needs or your clients need, everything your competitors do and everything you do. Again, this is just to summarize the point I was making. If you market here, this is the home of fee pressure. Put your marketing and your messages here and you're starting to hit premium fees. The gist of this is that if you can't differentiate your service, your prospects will, and they'll do it by the only criteria that's available to them, and of course that's the price. Now, we're on to part 2. How are we doing for time? Oh, not too bad. Right, this is how to be magnetic to your potential clients, how to really stand out and appeal to them. Got to remember a couple of points. One is that no one is interested in you. So again, the copy of the website, you want to be using what we call you phrasing, talking about what you, the reader, the potential client can get, not we pride ourselves on and can deliver. They're, of course, only interested in what you can do for them. Now, this drives a fundamental change in your marketing and in how you present yourselves. Instead of the me and us show, you're going to become that you and your challenges show. And you could see that from Janet and John, how that journey is beginning there and the difference in the results that are coming through from it. This is a quote from Gail Crossley, wrote a fantastic book called At the Crossroads that I would recommend, that charts, it's, again, she's got her imaginary characters in this, the journey from pure marketing and communications to business development and the results that can bring. Now, in terms of what you can achieve, what those challenges are, this is some research that came out in the last month. It's actually from the Australian market. So this isn't a reflection of UK businesses. I don't know if that would make much of a difference. But these are the key concerns and challenges that business owners are listing. I thought it was quite a surprise that we're seeing cash flow come in here at number 4, which I would have thought, I don't know about you, Steve, I would have thought that'd be quite a bit higher.
Yeah, it's pretty close though to the others, isn't it? So it's a jugular issue. It doesn't really matter where the ranking is. Those top 5 or 6 areas are things which we must be able to help them with.
Absolutely, and you know, the key here again, I was surprised at, you know, the stress and the lifestyle. You know, they're identifying that. You know, they're identifying that so keenly. But whatever these issues are, these are where you need to be focusing on, as opposed to the services and what you do. It's these concerns and how you can help them improve.
Yeah, what's really interesting, not a single one of those is my tax bill's too high or my compliance burden is too great.
Absolutely, yeah. The one thing, potential clients, I've never heard them, and we talk to hundreds every week. We never hear, I'd like more compliance, please. I'd like that to be better. It's quite binary.
And actually, I mean, in the first part of that sentence, you made a really, really important point. Is probably Patrick and his team talk to more prospects than you have done. They talk to more in a month than you've probably done in an entire career. They really, really understand what UK business owners who are buying accountancy services and are looking in the market for accounting services, they really understand what they're looking for because they're talking to them day in, day out, every single minute. That's what they do. So actually, Patrick's insights are hugely, hugely valuable.
Thanks, Steve. It's a good point, because one thing we don't do is, for any of our clients, is compete on price. So when price comes up, the conversation kind of ends, or we try and explore other areas. So we do get some depth on the real issues, on what matters. Now, this is one of the many things today, Steve, I've robbed from you. So thank you. But this is something that came out, I don't know if it was in a talk, I think it may have been from the masterclass.
All my talks, Patrick, so yeah, but it's an important point, isn't it?
But it's so important, and I've used it in a blog before and attributed you to it. But this is the key to it. This is the value that you can bring. It's the better data, better analysis, that helps those business owners, those clients make better decisions, better results, better business. And Steve's last box here I ran out of room for is a better world, you know, happier people. If you haven't read Steve's book, The World's Most Inspiring Accountants, I mean, I've read all your books, Steve, they're all great, but I just love that. And as you know, we used to read a chapter daily. Once we got to the end, we now do it once a week, because it's so important for our people to realise this isn't about making successful people more successful. The work we do and what you do, because we're just a reflection of what the profession does, is make a better world. You know, and I just want to kind of touch on that. Another one I've brought from you here, Steve. This comes, I think, from your introduction in the book, but the enormous impact of the scope that you have and the changes you can make to people's lives within the profession. This is your potential spectrum, the value you can bring and how you can change lives. And just moving somebody 1 or 2 notches along here, you know, if for a moment we leave the practice growth side away, but it makes your work so much more interesting and so much more rewarding when you can see these kind of results. And on a financial side, of course, the fees are higher because they can't get this kind of help from other firms. It's so rare, so difficult to find an advisor that can help them on this level, that when, from our experience, we'll talk to business owners and we'll say, hey, I'm calling from so-and-so accountant. And every now and again, we hear, and we love it, we hear, I don't care if you were free, my accountant is so brilliant, has made such a difference, I'd never leave him.
Yeah.
But of course, the financial impact is enormous as well. Sorry, Steve.
No, that is, I think, where the accounting profession needs to position itself. It's our huge opportunity to make a difference in the world, and so yeah, I'm thrilled that you're making that point.
No, I was on the way to. I can remember pages of notes I scribbled on a train off to see a client in Kent. I couldn't hand them the presentation I'd made because I'd scribbled all over it by mistake. Right, now let's move on to the next one. This is just, I'm trying to give you some examples. We're moving on a bit time-wise, so I'm going to have to speed up. But these are just some examples of how we can express that difference. It's so important that we can give them value in advance of working with them. If we're putting regular content out, this is from some website copy we put together for a firm that specializes in the creative sector. What we want is nodding as they're reading this. So they're saying, yeah, that's me. And then down the bottom, we're bringing some value of the key figures they need to focus on. We've got supporting content here for critical reports that creatives must have, etc. I'm going to show you again the value of good, strong copy. This has come from the accountant's website. There's nothing terrible about it. I'm not picking on the firm. It's pretty much standard copy that you would see everywhere. You can see the heading isn't terribly inspiring, although it does what it says on the tin, I suppose, inheritance tax planning. First paragraph, of course, so key. Inheritance tax threshold starts at blah, blah, the rate of blah, blah. It's unsurprising that most families prefer to plan to mitigate this cost as far as possible. Yeah, as I say, it's not a compelling read. It's forcing you onto the next paragraph. I'm now going to show you an example of really strong, well-written copy, and hopefully you can see the impact here. Look at the heading. How to guarantee your kids get more than the taxman. That is what inheritance tax planning is about to people who are interested or who it's relevant to. And again, I hope you can just feel the difference there and how compelling that is. I'll quickly pop in. I'm going to speed through this, but let me ask you a question, and please don't be offended, but your answer could determine how much of your wealth you pass on to your children and how much will be taken by the taxman. Here's the question. Did you realise that if you're married, have an estate worth $2 million to be split evenly among your 4 children at the time of your death, the taxman will receive more money than any of your children? Again, it's quite striking. It's incredibly well-written copy. It comes from Money Week, Gora publishers who are renowned for the quality of their copywriting. The point I'm making here is that most accountants will write their own copy, will write their emails, will write the copy on their website. Or you might even hire a copywriter. You might get your website designed by a firm that knows absolutely nothing and haven't even asked you about your ideal client. Everything has to start from your ideal perfect client. I know you had Drayton Bird, the copywriter, talking at one of the ABN conferences a few years back, Steve.
Very early ABN conference, Patrick, and he was awesome.
Oh, yeah, he's one of my heroes there. He's such a good copywriter. I spent a few days with him a few years ago. But I looked at his, before he'll take a client on, he'll send them a briefing document. I think it's like 8 or 9 pages long. He won't consider working with them until he's got that amount of research and detail. And that's where the good stuff comes from. So important. Everything you do focuses outwards from this perfect client. And that's why you need the understanding. I'm running a bit slow, going to speed up. Right. Here, a couple of slides, quick ones. This is the perfect client described on a firm's website. To help you decide if we're right for you, here's a description of the business owners who we bring most value to. Now, you want to grow the business, and at the end of the year, you want more money in the bank. You're doing all right, but you're not close to the success your work deserves. You love your work, fed up with red tape. You're not sure your tax bills are as low as they could be. Down to the bottom one, you have an accountant. He does an okay job, but you wouldn't consider them a key advisor. Hopefully you're starting to see a picture developing there, who that's going to appeal to. Other thing really important is you're seeing the doughnuts, the bad clients, the tight wads being repelled. They are not going to go for you. You're not going to draw them in, as opposed to the lukewarm copy that we looked at earlier, that's on most firms' sites, which I suppose is a little bit like just hanging a net into the pool of potential clients. You're going to get a mix of whatever's out there. You're going to get them in proportion to the numbers that actually exist. This kind of copy, you're starting to be red hot to the few and to repel those you don't want. Now, this is an example of showing your character and of appealing to people like you, because they tend to be the kind of clients that you do well for. We work with Damien at Turner Accountancy in Motherwell. You can see some of the character that's coming out on the page here. Let's have a look. Damien dislikes having to pretend he understands accounts, and the fact is no longer 1985. We're down here to Kirsty. Dislikes getting a picture taken, likes wild nights out. Denise, her children curtailing her legendary drinking. Now, it might be that this really is looking at this saying, this is very unprofessional, I don't like it. That's fine, because you're not the ideal client who it's appealing to. And just to show you the kind of success that Damien, also Daisy, is having with his firm, Damien and the office closes on a Friday, so they effectively work a 4-day week. And just a couple of months ago, Damien picked up the 2020 Group Most Innovative Sole Practitioner Award, during which he very kindly thanked us from the stage for helping him grow his ideal client list. Now, we've looked at how we can pull those great clients out, but equally, we can't tell who the bad ones are. So what can we do to pull them out of the crowd? What can we do to pick on these people? Well, we've talked about premium fees from perfect clients, kind of loss-making fees, real squeezing the margin from the other end of the spectrum. But when you're taking clients on, if they are the doughnuts, it's not that they're low fees, you're working for free. This is something that I did for far too long, longer than I would care to admit to. But I would sit down, have a meeting, maybe 2 meetings. I'd put an awful lot of thought into a proposal. I'd send it off to them, and in the end, I would feel like sending something along these lines or having this conversation. Thank you for allowing me to present my expertise. It's taken me a lifetime to learn, just like you. So you're sending them out free of charge and commitment. We've invested hours into a proposal to help them achieve their goals, and now they won't even take our call. And that's probably because any half-competent, cheaper advisor can now implement what we've laid out. So that is the problem. It's so demoralizing. It takes our energy as well and our enthusiasm for the work we do. And that's just a really important point to make. It's not just about the money. It's our capacity to do well and do good work. These people destroy it. Here is an inquiry I had back in the summer. It's from somebody called Chris. I won't even tell you what county they're in. But Chris sent me this through. I'm just going to have a look at it in a little bit more detail. I had a 2 p.m. appointment on the telephone with Chris. At 5:02, he sent this over. Read your literature. I'd sent him a report. Nothing new in what you have. Send me costings, methodology, how you're going to do it, and time span. Now, as far as ideal clients and our non-ideal clients go, ideal clients have respect for your knowledge and respect for your time. Chris quite clearly has no respect for my time. It's 5 minutes before our appointment when the email arrives, after I've done the research. He said there's nothing new in what I have. What he does want, and this is the real giveaway, when the clients focus on cost, how do you do it, the methodology, and the time span. They're the 3 things you really want to look out for. Years ago, I would have jumped in and we would have started on the journey with Chris. Nowadays, I just send out a really brief email, just, give your thoughts. I don't think we're right for you. Best of luck in the future. Now, I want to show you this as well. It's not just our who's getting in touch with us or the people we're talking to. It's the environment that we can find and deal with these people in. I love Mark. We work on a few bits and bobs together. He interviewed me last year in Accounting Web. I'm actually off to Mark's birthday party at the weekend. So there's no criticism of Mark here, but this is an interview that came out, had several thousand views, wonderful, 26 comments. I mean, isn't that fabulous? But there's some suggestions here about how well I am matched and what we do to the Accounting Web audience. These were the first comments that came through. The Emperor's New Clothes in French, which was appreciated by 9 other readers. And you can see here a bit of an echo chamber. So-and-so is going to have a seizure when he reads this. Now, my personal favourite was a very succinct one-worder, which you can see there. The gist of this, and why I'm showing you this, is that it doesn't matter what our message is or how relevant our message is or the quality of the message. It's who it goes out to. It's the audience that you're talking to. Because however wonderful we are, we can't help everybody. So what I'm going to show now, just to build myself up again after that very disturbing moment or two, is that the exact same content I focused on for our webinar just before Christmas last year. So it was a few months later, but it was the identical content that went out to the webinar that Steve so kindly hosted for us. I think we had 60 or 70 people on. I think I got 7 or 8 emails in response to that. Just really positive, and I could have done with a bit of a lift, so they were very well appreciated. Here's one just saying, thanks for the webinar. I wish I'd seen your presentation 45 years ago when I qualified. There's just, again, appreciation of the webinar. And again, somebody down here saying, can you send me the notes because I didn't have time to write it up. I'm not bigging me up, but I just think after the last one, we deserve a bit of balance there. So sometimes you can get a terrible reception, but it's making sure that you've got the right message that's going out to the right audience. What works particularly well for me is when I match to the right audience, like Steve and AVN members and the people Steve connects with. I also write a regular column in the AAT's magazine, Accounting Technician, on business development. I mention this because if you, like Janet, have clear outcomes and clear focus on how you can help particular sectors, please, please, please approach the magazines, approach the conferences, get onto the groups on LinkedIn and start helping people. Shaz made a wonderful, Shaz Nawaz, an AVN member, made a fantastic talk about this at the AVN conference this year, Steve, and just how he had made this journey.
And the transformation in his results and actually in his life is just extraordinary. He went from, and I'm doing this off the top of my head, but his average fees per client 6 or 7 years ago were £500 to £700, and now the new clients he brings on board have average fees of 10 times that amount. I mean, those are approximately the magnitudes, but that is not an exaggeration. And inevitably, that's transformed everything for him, yeah?
Absolutely, and it's positioning himself as an expert and demonstrating that expertise.
Yeah,
I've just been nudged.
He stands on stage, he does all those things which really set himself apart, and yet he wasn't a natural at any of those things by his own admission. They terrified him, but he did them and is reaping the rewards fabulously. And there's the moral, really, even if some of this stuff is a bit terrifying. That's too strong a word, but the point is you'll reap the rewards fabulously when you just do it.
Absolutely. Do you know, and I totally relate to that. The first webinar I did was only a few years ago, and I almost cancelled it a couple of days before. I was petrified. So I totally understand that. Now, I'm running a bit late, so I'm going to speed up a bit more. I'm just going to show you now how to spot a good inquiry, because on the face of it, they can seem very similar. Again, this is about accounting telemarketing. apologies, it's just what I have available. As I said, there's no pitch for that at all. But could you contact me? We've always given accounting telemarketing a wide berth on the basis that it's going to generate fee-conscious pains in the backside. So in many respects, you say, well, he doesn't think much of the kind of work you're doing. The difference here is that and this is another Chris, what this Chris is focusing on is the outcomes. And it says here you may have a different approach, perhaps more in line with how we operate. If I'd worked with the other Chris, even if we'd agreed a price and it was low, I wouldn't have got the outcomes. I wouldn't have got the results. I just know that from experience. 9 months later, I sat down with Chris, and we've got him recorded. He comes across so well on video. I use it more than I should. But I think it's your normal practice to set revenue target, which obviously we look at thinking, oh yeah, that's going to happen. We targeted £28,000 at the end of that year, or towards the end of the year, we'd actually doubled it. But the key here for Chris is decent clients. His average fee was 9,800. Now, part 3, get to the good stuff. We're going to focus here on attracting the perfect client. What that means is money in the bank. There's an issue here. I've got one slide covering what we did last year on the webinar and what I talked about with Mark. And that's that marketing doesn't work. I want to very briefly tell you and encourage you by telling you how low the bar is. I was with the business development director of a top 20 firm. I asked him to explain his ideal client to me. He walked out of the room, brought back into the room a part qualified accountant and said, ask her. He had no idea. He wasn't even marketing, he was business development of a top 20 firm. The vast majority of marketing directors, marketing managers I talk to have no idea whatsoever who their perfect client is. When I say what's special about the work the firm produces, the outcomes, they have no idea. The bar is so low. Now, marketing focuses on communications. It's called marketing communications. If you're very lucky, they might talk about lead generation. Lead generation does not put money in the bank. Then it stops. What is so important is that we change our vocabulary. This is again coming down to mindset. I think the word abracadabra is Hebrew for we create, or I create as I talk, as I speak. The words we use do actually have an impact on what we do. So I would suggest that we stop using the word marketing, abandon it, focus on business development. Again, if you have budgets, don't talk about them. Everything you do, don't talk about spending the budget, focus on return on investment. If I'm investing in new clients, I need to know before a penny is paid what the return is likely to be in year 1 and over the lifetime of that work. And if I can't estimate it and put a target in place and trace it, I will not do it. Here's an example of the kind of testimonials. We talked earlier about value in advance, about showing people what we can do. We say it means nothing. Clients describe it, that's where the value is. That's what has an impact. Now, again, I'm not picking on this particular firm. It could have got it off of anywhere. Look at the words used. Very polite, professional, extremely helpful. Minimum standard. I found the payroll staff very thorough, helpful, very pleased with the performance. Minimum standard. Darryl has been auditing our business for years without a problem. I don't expect problems. We found him to be efficient, effective and trustworthy. Minimum standard. There's a key to quality testimonials. I'm going to use, again, I'm falling back on us. I feel quite guilty on this, but I just couldn't find the examples out there. What we're going to use with our testimonials moving forward, the most effective testimonials, focus and start on the biggest objection our clients have to working with us. Now, for us, we are expensive and we cannot guarantee success. So that's what in the conversation I have with my clients, I tease out initially. We have strong reservations about signing an agreement A for G. It's quite a commitment to make for a firm of our size. Again, I want the prospect nodding along. Yeah, I can understand that. It's an expensive process and there's no guarantees of success. Then we go on, I'm not going to go into the copy here, but the gist of it of it is it worked for me. I'm going to address one or two other things that are key. I know from the conversations we have with accountants. Big issue is, will they represent me professionally? So again, the fact that this particular client, we called a couple of his friends and they got good feedback, was important. Hopefully you can see here the kind of impact and how the value in testimonials is enormous, and accountants are not touching the sides of it. This is just an email that came in yesterday. I just had to use it because the timing was so good. Hi Patrick, every word is important. I hope you're well. I don't know him. He's got no interest in me. It means nothing to me. I'm reaching out to you as I wanted to be one of the first people to know about our co-branded edition. I don't even know what the magazine is about. Co-branded edition is not officially launched until, so what? This is all about him. There's nothing in there about me. Waste of his time sending it out. So, how are we going to attract these ideal clients? Now, the whole point of marketing is to get meetings with quality potential clients. Somebody very wise said this. Sales is what happens during and after the meeting. And you know it was Steve Pipe.
I was thinking, that's probably me, Patrick.
I was sitting in the audience at the Accountex exhibition. I think it was a couple of years ago when you came out with this. And I grabbed you and we had a coffee afterwards. And it was just so wonderful to hear. To sum it up in a couple of lines, this is the point.
The meeting is the pivotal point, isn't it? In the middle of the whole thing. Without the meeting, you're not going to pick up a high quality client.
Totally. And there's this enormous disconnection between what firms are spending their money on, the budgets they're blowing, and the outcome in terms of money in the bank. And this is the key. This is the key ingredient. Because you're not going to get quality clients in if you're not having meetings with them. So that is the purpose. And of course, from that meeting comes the proposal, and from the proposal comes the client. So, bit of a summary here. Attracting your perfect clients. We need to focus on perfect clients only, and we've seen already today how the messages we put out can make us red hot to the few and repel the others. It's not going to be like putting the net into the water and getting a perfect mix of what's out there. We're going to bring value in advance of working with you, the prospect. We're not going to sell, we're going to solve their problems. We're going to have them thinking, if they can do this for me before I'm working with them, if they can give me so much helpful information and advice, imagine what they can do for me when I'm actually paying them. And we're going to deliver proof, which is going to be results, case studies, so important, testimonials. You can't have too many of these. Make sure they're specific. Make sure they're honest. Be warts and all. Show the bad bits. And we're going to be regular and frequent with that help until they're ready to act. We started putting a lot of content out a few years ago. We didn't sell. We focused on advice. Within 6 months, I got a phone call from a consultant in Mumbai. Within a couple of weeks, I met up with the chief executive of the subsidiary of a $5 billion Indian finance organization looking to launch in the UK. We met up with the consultant and the chief executive in a hotel in London. Within 2 weeks of that, I was in Chennai for a week looking over the whole operation, seeing how it worked. And within a month, we were launching them. We were far from the biggest in terms of firms that could have done that work or could have launched them into the UK. But they chose us because we were giving them value in advance. When they looked on LinkedIn, when they were receiving emails, reports, etc., we were the only one that was talking their language and demonstrating what could be done. And it will work for you, especially the more niche, the more focused you are. Now, again, I'm going to give you some final proof here, and I'm just trying to make certain specific points. Here's just some feedback we've had in the last 12 months. By the way, he did say he doesn't normally take cold calls, persuaded by that, because that's a key issue for our prospective clients, this reputational damage or reputational enhancement that the telephone can do. I've also dropped in the fee because that's kind of the fees that we start bringing in for clients, the kind of £4,000 upwards. Here, another one. So many firms have used the telephone. It's been a disaster. So it's good to put that in some kind of context. And finally, we always agree targets. It's very rare we don't meet them. I can't remember in the last couple of years we've certainly met every target we've set for a client. So these are the key considerations. You will have yours. I apologise again. Sounds a bit salesy, but I just couldn't find similar examples. Now, value in advance. You all should have been sent this report. Now, I know that quite a few of you haven't received it, so I'm going to resend it to you after the webinar today. But this will just touch on some of these principles of how to attract those 15%, those people that do have that higher ceiling, those people that do look for value. Look what I found. Here's a report from an accountant that is focusing on, he's using, is your accountant spinning the beans on the growth opportunity. So this is about the growth opportunities hiding in the numbers, numbers-driven growth. Now, no surprise, this is from Chris from Beyond Profit. Of course, used to be AVN Beyond Profit. Again, you see that link with AVN, the clients that we do well with. Now, finally, I'm giving you this as an example. This is one of our older clients. When I first spoke to Andrew, I asked him who his ideal clients are. He spat out, their children are privately educated, they have holiday homes, they use Apple Macs, they drive these cars. He knew his ideal clients inside out, which is why he pulls in the highest average fee of our clients. I tell you what's really good, get their permission, but if you can use direct, clear emails, letters, things like that, rather than even interpreting them, it's a lot more powerful. Here you can see Andrew pulled in £65,000 worth of new business from 4 clients over certainly less than 3 months. I'd love to say that was typical. It's only on here because that's pretty special going. But again, that's the kind of thing that you want to put out there. That's kind of proof. This I'm going to touch on. We all know the threat so talked about from cloud accounting. This is from the professional services man at Reuters. He's saying 30 to 35% of firms are going to disappear. What again we don't see is, look, less than 10% that are aggressively transforming their firms. They're going to thrive and go through the roof. I'd say it's 15% because these are the firms that are going to focus and attract their ideal clients. It is not as difficult as it appears. This journey, as we've seen Shaz, countless AVN members make. So I just want to open it up now to any questions. Let's hopefully, let me just pop back here. We're actually going to be able to get some coming through on the chat box. So if you have any questions from the content so far, please fire away. Now, I don't know if Steve, if there's anything I brought up there that has provoked any thoughts.
You know, the phrase that I love that you used really quite early on when you were comparing diamonds and donuts, and you rightly pointed out that if you have too many donuts, you feel unwell. And that is just a brilliant metaphor, I think, for where just so much of the accounting profession is at. We're effectively taking on too many donuts and not structured our practices, both our service delivery, our marketing messages, and the words that we use in those marketing messages, so that we attract diamonds. And you've given us a huge number of diamonds today that will help people start attracting those diamond kind of clients. And I loved also your intersection of the 3 circles between what clients need and what your competitors are providing and what you provide. And that sweet spot is not the one in the middle, because that's where the price pressure is, but it's where what you do is different from other people, and it's what clients really value. And that's partly substance. It's actually partly doing great stuff, but it's as much about the words that we use. Many accountants do great stuff, but they don't use the right words to communicate it effectively, and therefore no one realizes that they're doing great stuff, and they don't get the rewards they deserve. So you've given us lots of really valuable insights into how to use the right words as well, as the right stuff.
Excellent.
Those are some of the key points to me. I don't see anything in the chat box at the moment, unless you do in yours. You've got a bit of a scroll bar there, so your scroll bar may take you down, because we could all see your screen, by the way, or at least I could. This is not the most interactive group. Come on, guys. This is a meeting rather than a webinar. This is not a fixed presentation. This is not a recording. We are here live, and it's really useful to get some some feedback at least, or some questions, some observations in the.
I think there's an issue there with the chat box. Apologies if that is the case. Right. I think there's just one really good point that I wanted to make. There's a client of ours who what he actually does when clients sit down the year-end meeting, and he'll say, right, this is the tax you owe. Here's your tax, what you're going to pay the tax man this year. The client gulps and he says, okay, well, let's see what we can do together to reduce it. And he then does the tax plan, and he explains to them face to face exactly the work that goes in to pull that figure down. I know so many accountants do the work, tell them what's to be paid. It's making sure that the quality of the work you do is transparent and they can see the benefit.
Absolutely. And do you know, I came across an incredibly simple but powerful way of positioning the price of tax planning the other day, and I'll attribute it to Paul Flynn, because it was Paul Flynn of Proactive Tax who was guest speaker at the masterclass we ran about 2 weeks ago. And I don't think I've ever heard anybody quite describe it like this. I thought it was sheer genius. He was talking about a conversation with a client where the client was facing a big tax bill. Let's say the tax bill was £100,000, and there was a piece of tax planning which a value-based fee was going to be, let's say, £10,000. If you go to the client and say, you know, if you want to do £10,000 worth of tax planning, they're going to be resistant. But that wasn't the language that he used. He said instead, you can either pay £100,000 or £10,000. Which would you rather pay? Where the 100 grand was the tax bill and the 10 grand was the fee for the planning. You know, put like that, how is any client going to choose anything other than the 10 grand tax planning bill rather than the 100 grand tax bill? And simply that tiny change of language, that really effective use of language, transforms the results that we get.
Yes, yeah, doesn't it? It's so important. We touched on the language earlier.